Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala rasulillah. So we're in session 6. Today is August 13th?
Yes.
8/13/19. Inshallah, make the intention for the sake of Allah. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala rasulillah. So inshallah, this is what we're going to be covering today. Inshallah, we're going to go through it point by point. Inshallah, just wanted to have the overview on the board. Inshallah, let's go through the first part, the rational judgments. And again, we're going through the book, and we're going step by step and building a very strong, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, relatively strong for our level, strong foundation in the matters of aqidah, in the matters of belief. So we talked about the rational judgments, and we said when we want to memorize a list, what should we do? Enumerate it, right? There are 3. What are the 3 rational judgments in the order that we gave?
Rational necessity.
The rational necessity, we'll explain briefly because we covered it a couple of times already, but it's fine to review it because it's needed, mashallah, because you want to be able to not just know it and be familiar with it, we need to be able to what? Explain. Yeah, knowing it and being familiar with it is one thing. Explaining it is another. The second category?
Rational impossibility.
The rational impossibility. And again, we'll explain bi'idhnillahi ta'ala briefly. We're not going to go into the details like we did before. And the third category?
Rational possibility.
The rational possibility. So the rational necessity, we said, is what? That which the mind says must exist. The intellect says it must exist, and this refers to Allah and His attributes. So the intellect, the mind, because in our religion, the intellect has, copy the meaning of this verse from Surah Mulk. Verse 10, copy this. Some of the disbelievers, this is not in the ayah itself, this is just in the context. Some of the disbelievers in the hereafter, they will say, if we had listened, meaning taking heed to the message of the prophets. I'm not done yet, so let me finish. If we had listened and used our minds, then we wouldn't be in hell. If we had listened and used our minds, then we wouldn't be in hell. This will be some of the disbelievers will say in the hereafter. وَقَالُوا لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعُ أَوْ نَعْقِلُ لَوْ كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. So what's this verse telling us? Use the what?
Mind.
To use the mind. We're not people who disregard, or we said, or discard the use of the intellect. We use our minds to know what's proper to believe about God. So that's why when we talk about these rational judgments, it all fits with your what? Mind. We said that there has to be a creator because the universe exists. And we broke it down. We said the universe cannot be beginningless, and it can't be what? Self-created.
Yeah.
So something other than the universe must have made the universe. And we say this is God, the creator, Allah. The rational impossibility,
A circle and a square.
that's an example. What is it?
It's absolutely impossible.
What can't be. Remember we said what must be referred to the rational necessity referring to Allah. What must be, what
Can be.
can't be.
Can't be.
And the last one, the rational. What's an example? We said what? A square that is a circle. This is a rational impossibility. We're not talking about a square and a circle on the inside, okay? Or a circle with a square on the inside. We're saying the square, roughly this is a square, can't be a what? Circle. By definition. The square is not a circle, by definition. Can a square be a shape? Indeed, a square is a shape.
Right.
Can a circle be a shape? Yeah, they are shapes. But a square cannot be a what? Circle. And a circle can't be a square. We mentioned what? A married bachelor. This is a what? Rational impossibility.
Yeah.
Of course, the bachelor can get married, but as he is, if he's a bachelor, then he's not married by definition. By definition. The rational impossibility, what cannot exist under any circumstances. And the rational possibility,
It's possible.
yeah, what the mind says, this thing has the potential to exist. What could be. And we broke this down into two details. What were they? They refers to what? The rational possibility.
Rational. Customary and uncustomary.
The customary and uncustomary. Customary, Sister Sadi, means what usually happens, what's normal. Because we expect it from our what? Experiences. We take it for granted. Now you can go down the street a couple of miles and you see giant tubes, what, flying through the air. Right? Giant metal tubes flying through the air. We take it for what? Granted. Nobody like says let's pull the car over and let's look at this and try to figure this out. We take it for what? Granted. But we take it for granted because now that's become what? Technologically possible. And it's what? Technologically common.
Yeah.
But it's not even from 200 years ago. It was not impossible, but it would have been uncustomary to what?
Yeah.
The people of that time.
Right.
You follow? Planes, did they have large planes 200 years ago? No, of course not. Okay? So to see something like that, to see this giant tube going through the air, some people would freak out if they saw something like this, right? But it was never what? An impossibility. It was always a what? Possibility, even if technologically at that time they did not have the ability to do it. Do you follow? Because what is technologically possible, or let's say at a given time, something might be what? Technologically impossible. I didn't say rationally impossible, we said what? Technologically impossible. 200 years ago, they did not have the ability, by apparently these people, did not have the ability to produce what? Giant metal 200 foot, say 100 some foot tubes, enable them to what? Fly across the country. They did not have the ability to do this 200 years ago. Okay, that was why. Not rationally it wasn't possible, but technologically it wasn't possible. But with the development of technology, that which was technologically impossible became what? Technologically, not rationally, but technologically what? Possible. But it was always what? Rationally possible. Because the mind could conceive that there would be a giant tube that could what? Fly through the air. You could imagine. But at that time, talking about 200 years ago, it would have been technologically impossible, but not rationally what? Impossible. And why are we mentioning this? Because the materialists, they confuse what is technologically impossible with what is what? Rationally impossible. You follow? They'll tell you, this can't happen. Well, it's a rational possibility. For example, the miracles. Don't they say the miracles can't happen? Is it rationally possible that water could spring from between the fingers of a person? Can you imagine it? Yeah, so it's rationally possible. Do you expect it to happen? No, I didn't say it didn't happen. It did happen. So do you expect it usually to happen?
No.
Why don't you expect it to happen?
Because it's not the
Customary.
norm.
It's not the norm. That's it. They confuse the norm with the what? Impossibility. They think that that which is not normal is what? Impossible. The Muslim says that what is possible includes what? Customary things, the normal things, and the what? Uncustomary. You follow? And the technological, something might be technologically impossible, but it's not what? Rationally impossible. And you see the technological impossibilities by the norm, the normal impossibility, technological impossibilities, they change. We have a device now that has no wires or anything connected to it. I can dial some numbers and call someone in Africa. How long ago, say 100 years ago, how long would it take for us to send a message from here to Harar, to the middle of the central Ethiopia?
A couple of weeks.
Weeks?
Yeah.
Months?
Yeah, maybe.
Months. You'd have to get across the Atlantic, you'd have to get through the Mediterranean, you'd have to get up the Nile, and then you'd have to what? Get off somewhere, and then walk for months, weeks to Ethiopia to get there, to get the message, and then to what? Send the message back.
Yeah.
Now we can do it what? Like this. Say 150 years ago. I guess maybe they
I mean,
had.
50 years ago, you didn't have technology.
Definitely didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
People had phones 50 years ago, but
Yeah.
they didn't have cell phones. So all of this, just to summarize, the rational possibilities include. The mind says that this has the potential to exist. It could exist. We're not talking about whether it does or doesn't. We're going to talk about that later. But the mind says it's possible. Like it's possible I could release this pen and it what, floats up to the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine that? Yes. Okay. But when I release it, what do you expect?
To fall.
Why do you expect it to fall?
Gravity. Because it's normal.
The normal things. Now, don't say gravity. Even a little kid would expect the pen to what? Fall. Why? They never heard of the word gravity. They still expect the pen to what?
Fall.
Why?
Because it's normal.
That's what they have in their experiences. You follow? So we accept what? The customary norms, and we accept the uncustomary. The scientists, the Western scientists, they got it confused because they thought the norm was what happens by necessity. It doesn't happen by necessity. It just happens because this is the normal pattern, the customary pattern that Allah Ta'ala has created things. But if Allah wills for things to happen contrary to the customary pattern, we say what? Ma sha'Allahu kan wa ma lam yasha' lam yakun. Whatever Allah has willed to be shall be, and whatever Allah has not willed to be shall not be. That's it. Easy. طيب. So that's a summary. We talked about the rational judgments. Now we talked last week about refuting came up with a new term, the particlists. That's a made up, but it's good. It works. The particlists. And we talked about the incident with Abu Hanifa, radiyallahu anhu. So refuting the particlists. Who are the particlists?
The atheists, eh?
The atheists. What do we mean by the particlists?
They think that the world created itself.
That's ultimately what their belief leads to. Why do we call them particlists? That's what their belief leads to. Why do we call them particlists? What is this table made out of? Wood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the wood made out of? Particles. Okay, what am I made out of? Particles. The windows are made out of what? Particles, right? Because the glass is what? You can break it down into small what? Particles. You can take the wood and break it down into what? Small particles, right? The body itself, what? Usually the norm is it will break down into what? Small particles. Right? If you cut off your fingernail and you come back years later, it will what? Probably in most cases it will start to break down. So the particlists, because they are referred to typically as the what? Materialists. They believe all that exists is that which is perceived by the senses. When you talk about the ghaib to them or what they have through their instruments, right? You speak about the unseen dimensions, what do they say? You tell them about the jinn, they say,
They don't.
this can't exist. You tell them about the dimension, the realm of the angels, they'll say, it can't exist. They only believe in that which is perceived by the senses or that which they can observe through their instruments. The Muslims, we say, yeah, this world exists, but there's also things beyond our senses. Even the particlists, the materialists, that doesn't even believe that there's some phenomena of the mind. Have you ever seen anybody else's mind?
No.
No. You see the indications of intelligent behavior from people, but you don't actually see the what? The thought process. You see the what? The result of the thought process. People who built this building would say they have a level of what? Intelligence. In order to design this and build this, it requires what? Intelligence, knowledge and intelligence. Even though, can you actually see this thing called intelligence? You see the what? Signs of the intelligence. So even that atheist who he can't quantify and he can't physically see the mind, he believes in it. But he doesn't believe in a creator. You see how their belief is weak. So they, by their own claims, they have to believe in something beyond the senses, meaning in the least the mind. Furthermore, you talk about now going back to the material things, they are composed of what? Particles. And what did we say? We know the particles can't make themselves. Because what's the rule? A thing
Must be to exist.
a thing must be to do. The non-existent can't what? Do anything. Something has to exist in order to act. So the particles themselves can't make themselves. That's one issue. And what's the other issue we talked about regarding the particles?
Beginning.
Particles can't
The beginning.
form themselves into
Exist.
complex systems all by themselves. The particles, which, if you break them down, even according to their claims, do these particles have knowledge? No. Do the particles have will? No. So, yet these particles compose complex systems. This, again, the table's made from what? Wood, right? And the wood, ultimately, if you break it down, it gets to what? Particles. They would say to cells, but even the cells, your biology background, they say the cells have what? They are composed of, each cell is almost like a city from what they claim, right?
Yeah.
So, and even those things within the cell are composed of what? Particles. And even however you want to go, like they say atoms or molecules. But just to keep it simple, that those things are all composed of particles, according to even their model. So those particles, which don't have knowledge, which don't have will, according to what their theory leads to, arrange themselves into complex systems all by themselves. If each one had independent knowledge and independent will, then what problem would they run into?
They can do whatever they want to.
You go back to what? The Dalila to matter. If each one would be like a what? Quote unquote, God to itself. Each particle could will whatever it wanted. And then why would it be compelled to what? Agree with the other particles to form a complex system? It doesn't make any sense. You follow? So we know that the claim of the materialists, but when you call them particleists, their ideology sounds even more absurd. Because the material things are made of what? Particles. So then these particles, these tiny, tiny particles, according to them, apparently made themselves, and then not only made themselves, formed themselves into complex systems all by themselves. And then this led to what? The refutation of chance. This is such powerful knowledge, yet a young person can what? Understand it. It's not like, when you're in school, you're saying, man, what's the teacher talking about? This is so clear. Refutation of chance. And this goes back to, we're summarizing what Abu Hanifa, when he refuted the atheists. We'll summarize his story after this. What did we mention? What was the example? If you had a bag, like a paper bag, and you put cards, like you number cards, like little index cards, 1 through 10. Put them in the bag and you shake them up. The chance of getting them 1 through 10 in sequential order, that you randomly reach in the bag. We're not talking about cheating or anything like that, folding cards. You reach in the bag and pull out what? Number 1, and then number 2, and then number 3, and 4, and 5, and 6 to number 10. This is what's called permutation in mathematics or statistics. So the chance of getting them 1 through 10 in order, what was it, brother Yapin?
3.1 million.
1 in 3. Well, let's put the zero so when you see it, it seems really ridiculous according to their claims. The chance of pulling out those 10 cards in sequential order is 1 in 3.4 million. Is this a complex process? No. There's only what? 10 cards. How many particles make this table? How many particles make your body? Your eye, just your eye. How many particles make your eye? A lot. So the chance of pulling those cards out, 1 is 1 in 10, 1 through 10. In sequential order is 1 in 3.4 million. The math behind it is easy. All you do is say, what's the chance of pulling out number 1? When the bag is, when you put the 10 cards in, what's the chance of pulling out number 1? How many cards are there? 10. So what's the chance of pulling out number 1? 10. So it'll be 1 times 10. And then how many cards are left? 9. So then to get number 2 next will be what? 1 in 9. And then number 3 next? 1 in 8. And then you do out the math and you get 3.4 million. And if we add just 5 more cards, so it should be 1 through 10. 1 through 15, the chance of getting them in sequential order is what?
1.3 trillion.
It is 1 in 1.3 trillion, not billion. Not billion, brothers, sister. 1 in 3.1 in 1.3. Hold up. Trillion. No, million, billion, trillion.
True.
Need some more zeros today.
Yeah, need some more ciphers on there. Yeah, so that's million, billion, trillion. Yeah, so this is 1 in 1.3 trillion. Just to reach in the bag and pull out what? 15, 1 through 15. Is that a large number? No. Just to get them in sequential order. You might got 3 in a row, for example, and then you messed up on the back to the beginning.
Just dive back over.
Yeah. So the chance of getting them in order, 1 in 1.3 trillion. So these characters who are saying the universe, apparently the particles made themselves, and then they what? Formed themselves into complex systems according to their claims. And then saying that it's all happening by what? Chance, according to their claims. Yet, if you told them, well, last night I tried this, and I wasn't cheating, and I got out, I did it 4 out of 15 times. They will say you're a liar. Yeah, liar. And they would say, statistically, this is impossible. Statistically, is impossible. What is do you see how this is absurd? And to summarize Abu Hanifa's issue, when he went to debate the atheists, he intentionally came late to the meeting with the atheists. And then when he showed up in the session, it was the ruler was there, the Khalifa, and other prominent people. And then the Abu Hanifa told the atheist, what if I told you? He did not lie. He said, what if I told you I came to the bank of the river and the planks came together and they formed a boat and I sailed across the river? The atheist said, oh, you people, you believe this idiot, like he's saying, like, oh, you believe something silly like this is your scholar. And then Abu Hanifa stopped him. And he said, oh, you enemy of Allah. If this boat cannot form itself, then how could the universe form itself? And the atheist was what? Silence. That's it. Because we know, this goes back to what we said. The existence of the Creator is a rational necessity. The mind says that this universe can't create itself. It can't be beginningless. It can't be happening by what? Chance. So there has to be a great and supreme Creator. Okay, that's our review. We'll stop here for part 1. Walhamdulillah wa sallallahu